So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, and their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this morning, I'm delighted to have with us Todd Hannula, who's co-founder and creative director at Shine Workspace in Leeds. So, Todd, firstly, thank you so much for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, Shine, what you do, how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Thanks, Chris. Yes, my name is Todd Hannula, and we founded Shine 2007, I think it was, and opened the doors in 2008. It's a 40,000 just for people who don't know. And a lot of people still don't know us. I mean, we don't really have a marketing budget. It's all word of mouth we built a business on. And it's a 40,000 square foot renovated Victorian school building in the heart of Hare Hills, just about 5 minute walk from St. James. We've modernized it and created what I think is quite an amazing space. And we built a lot of other businesses in the interim. I think we ended up starting about four other businesses, and some were successful, some not so successful, and maybe we'll get into a little bit of that. And today we are successfully running a meeting and conference business and lets out of the building, along with a catering business around Leeds. And we are a social enterprise, which, for those who don't know, is basically a business with a purpose written into its articles. So we recycle all of our profits for good, and our particular good is supporting women entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs in their journey to become more self-sustainable and realize their ambitions. We This is something that's been morphed from originally worked with women ex-offenders. Since that was so successful, we no longer had to do that. So we moved on to women entrepreneurs. So that's a little bit about what the business is and what we do for part of our social enterprise.
Wonderful. And we met a long time ago, and one thing I would say to anyone watching is whatever you do, please go, and the outside of the building is beautiful, and the inside of the building is beautiful too, and it's a great place to go and Eve just have a look around and find out what facilities and what things available for
And we've
absolutely.
got parking.
And you got plenty of parking, which is
Yeah,
not a thing in Leeds in general anymore.
yeah.
And am I right thinking you've had a new initiative you launched as part of International Women's Day recently?
Yeah, so in during COVID, Don O'Keefe, who's a co-founder of Shine, launched something called She Can Shine, and it's essentially in the initial inspiration of it was helping women entrepreneurs in the sort of from the idea stage to about 3 years. And of course, during COVID, it was all on Zoom, and everybody was just kind of meeting on Zoom and helping each other. And then as COVID ended and we got back to a meeting in real spaces, we started having events in Shine to support the women entrepreneurs. And then it morphed into training and education and networking and everything. And it has really exploded. So much so the fourth cohort just finished with 80 women finishing sort of 9 month process, both educational, networking, and inspiring. I did a bit of a vox pop on it on this last one. I went around and videoed people, and inspiration was definitely the word that I asked them to say three words that describe their own personal journey on this
Brilliant.
program. And inspiration, or inspirational, or inspired were definitely the words that kept coming up. But we've got to take that to the next level. We've launched a digital platform for She Can Shine where we'll be running the courses and the networks online. And we'll be starting in Leeds at first, but we'll be looking to build this out to core cities across the UK, and then, of course, back to America, my home country, and then wherever we can go in Europe. And hopefully spark a bit of a movement for women entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs working in big companies that want to just take that step to become a bit more entrepreneurial.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Very exciting. I do work with a few very inspirational female entrepreneurs. So if there's anything it's useful to connect you with them, I'd be delighted.
That would be fantastic because we often do bring them in because it's not good enough for you or I, middle-aged white guys to come in and tell everybody what the deal is. I mean, they're kind of looking at us like cross-eyed, like, yeah, I don't really need to hear from you. So it's whenever we can, we
Great.
want to get successful women who have been on all kinds of different journeys to come and speak to the groups about different things. So yeah, if you
Brilliant.
can pass those details, it'd be great.
Be delighted to do that. So Don, if we sort of look backwards to start with, and if you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into business, and why this particular one for you. That'd be great.
Okay, the sort of 1 minute synopsis is I keep saying this story and I keep working longer and longer. So I think I started when I was 9, but
Oh, wow.
mowing
Wow.
lawns as you do in the States, you have summer jobs and whatnot. Um, but no, I went to school for a very long time to get a couple different degrees. I've got MBA, just about finished my master's in science. I did all the research and the thesis work, but never finished my thesis. Life took over, and I first went on to be a scientist, and I was working as a groundwater engineer, which is probably what most people would know what it is. But I had a master's in hydrogeology, which is I was studying the movement of water and what
Right.
effects of water in the ground. I was in it for about 5 years, and then uh, the whole time I was in it, I really did like it quite a bit. I love science, and I love that. But it was right when computers and networking were coming about, so I got really interested in that, and I started setting up the network in the office and trying to make everything work better on the computers. We had a bunch of Macs, and then as it happened, a couple of life events happened, and then the industry actually collapsed because the we were cleaning up oil spills at gas stations around the United States,
Right.
and the budgets were quite massive, and so there were a lot of consulting firms working on this and doing this work. And I think the oil companies were able to lobby and they changed the law so they could take longer to clean up or something, and the industry just basically collapsed. So
Right.
and a life event happened. My then wife's mother passed away, and so we were going to make a move from the balmy parts of Syracuse, New York, to Atlanta, Georgia, where I spent a lot of my childhood.
Right.
And I read an article. This is I will always stick with me. I read an article in Fast Company magazine. Do you know that magazine?
I don't know.
Okay, it's a big magazine in the States for
Yep.
tech, and it's kind of tech slash lifestyle, perhaps, but a lot of tech
Yep.
magazine. And it was the funeral for one of the founders of, I believe it was Oracle.
Yep.
And there were four founders to Oracle, as the story goes, and only one of them was a computer scientist. Another was a history major, one was like languages or something. And that
Right.
fascinated me. And I thought, actually, I don't have to know about this tech. This was 97.
Yes.
This was the height of the tech boom.
Yep.
Yahoo had just come out and so on and so forth.
Yep.
I thought, well, I'm technical, but I don't actually have to have that because I have a bit of a sales background in my tech. So moved to Atlanta and worked for a .com. And of course, it was the classic story. Worked for a place where they give you a bunch of shares, and then you realize about a year in that they aren't going to be worth anything unless this company becomes the next Google. And so ended up going and working at AT&T and worked there for a long time. Worked there for about 8 years. Did contract negotiations in the end for global clients, and that's where I onto an MBA program, Zach MBA program at Georgia State, and met my wife, Dawn, who is the partner in the business, and we moved to England. This is important because we moved without any jobs,
Right.
without any network, without
Wow.
anything, because she'd been in the States for about, I think at that point, about 8 years by the time because I think yeah, about 8 years she'd been in the States. So she didn't
Right.
really have any network. She had a consultancy firm. And so we moved to the UK. We just thought, I mean, this is how when you're in your early 30s and you just had a
Yep.
baby, you're like, I've just created a human. I work at a big company. Definitely my poop doesn't stink because I'm amazing now. And we were making more money than probably we ever imagined in our entire lifetime. Surely Dawn was for sure. She had an extremely successful consulting business, and we just thought, oh, we'll just up sticks and go. And so we moved to Yorkshire, where she's from. She's from Wakefield,
Right.
and it was a trying 5 months, 6 months. Well, the beginning, because we tried to do five different things at the same time. I would not recommend that to anybody. There is you talk about you're going to ask me some quotes or something. There is one that I just is coming back to mind now is burn the boats, and I
Yes.
think it's a Descartes. I think it's famously misattributed uh, to the person that it's attributed to, but it is about you land and
Yep.
you on these new shores in Central America, and there's a bunch of bad guys that are going to probably beat you beat you at war in the jungle, and if you don't burn the boats, all your guys are just going to retreat
Yeah.
back to the boats. And I do think my takeaway from that quote or that sort of idea is that you do have to go all in on something
Yes.
because this idea that you have a sort of safety or backup plan
Yeah.
is complete BS in my mind. It doesn't work because you end up your boat just starts sinking slowly
Yeah.
instead of fast. And you'd rather have a fast sinking boat that you know is starting to sink than you can jump and go into another boat. So we were doing trying to do five different things at the same time. None of them were going anywhere. And we did have contacts and so forth. Oh, by the way, the reason we were doing five things is because AT&T, I was getting a corporate transfer from at the time we were stationed in Boston, so from Boston to London, and right in the middle of my transfer, AT&T got bought by a tiny little company called SBC, and you won't know this, but it was one of the breakups of the main telephone company.
Right.
They actually came back and bought the mother company, kept the name obviously of AT&T,
Yes.
but they froze all transfers. So we literally landed with nothing, nothing. But we're
Oh,
like, hey,
heck.
we'll make it work. I actually don't remember being that worried about it. I was like, whatever, it's fine. Let's go. And by the way, we're gonna live in Harrogate is where we've landed. And oh, that's only 11 miles from Leeds or 12 miles from Leeds and only 14 miles from Bradford. We can go to all these places, not knowing that unlike America, where 11 miles takes you 8 minutes to go, 11 miles here takes you about 80. So
Yes. That's
that was a shock looking at the maps and then having the reality. Um, it was dinner about October, November timeframe. We made some spaghetti and had a glass of wine, finally put Kieran to bed. And we're just talking, what are we going to do? Because, none of these things are working. We've been trying this for 3 or 4 months. We need to figure out, we need to probably pick one. And it was we decided to do this thing my mother-in-law was involved in, which was social enterprise. And up to this point, I didn't know what that was or
yeah.
anything. Hadn't really had that much of an idea of what it was at all. And she worked at a small social enterprise in Wakefield, and we thought, wow, we could use our MBAs, our business background, and we could actually do something good with business and not wait to make a bunch of money and then turn around and be a philanthropist. It
Yes.
was, oh, we can do it at the same time.
Yes.
And because, sorry.
No, I agree. Yeah, it's a great. It's sorry. I just think it's great. It's a great explanation of social enterprise as opposed to, as you say, becoming a philanthropist after you made the
Yeah,
money.
there's nothing wrong with philanthropy, but
No,
we just
no.
thought, well, we'd kind
Yeah.
of been to the top of the mountain, got the t-shirt, made
Yeah.
the money, and we're like, it wasn't really fulfilling us. We were kind of having what
Yeah.
I would say is the sort of constant Gen Z thing for Gen Z is that they already know this stuff when they're 20, that this isn't going to fulfill you making a ton of money. There's got to be some sort of purpose behind it. Don't
Yes.
get me wrong. I'd rather be rich than poor, for sure.
Yeah.
But there is something, if you don't have a purpose behind it, it's a bit vacant. That
Yeah.
works for a small section of society, but for most of us, you're going to have some sort of purpose. So
Yeah.
we decided to do this social enterprise thing, and we went all in on it. And we ended up doing a social enterprise consultancy, and we got a bit of money. We burned through all of our 401k and pensions and everything. Credit cards were maxed out because it took us about 2 years to start generating any reasonable amount of
Right.
income. So, and then during that process, we got this idea of having a building to then help other social enterprises and train people.
Brilliant.
And this is a different kind of social enterprise. What we run is we don't run on grants. So while we did take to set up Shine half private and half public money and mesh it together to create the structure, which cost about £5 million to renovate.
Amazing.
We don't exist on grants ongoing. It's a commercial business.
Yeah.
And this is how all the businesses used to run before 1971. I think it was 1971, 1970, when Milton Friedman decided that you were a communist if you were CEO and you thought anything about community or social impact or anything of that nature or the environment. There's a famous Wall Street Journal op-ed by him, and a lot of people point to that as the turning point in capitalism, where it kind of got a bit mean and went the wrong
Right.
way.
Okay.
Before that, companies were built upon being good employers, good
Yep.
neighbors, good stewards. Yes, there was a lot of problems, 50s and 60s. Obviously civil rights was only coming about. Not all the companies were doing the right thing, but in general, they were moving in the right direction, and it
Yeah.
was going in the right direction. So anyway, we did this thing with Shine where we renovated this building, and then we started the School for Social Entrepreneurs. We raised 250,000 to bring that. I was one of a team of three with Stephanie Burrows, who I don't know if you've had her on here before.
No, I don't think
She
that.
would be an interesting person. She
Great.
speaks fluent German. She was a lawyer at Pinsent Masons, and then she also decided to go do social enterprise. And she was the person who founded Leads Ahead, I think it's called the Ahead Partnership now.
Right.
She
Yep.
started around the same time we did, so there was like,
Oh,
and then also Sally Ann Greenfield, who was another person. The three of us, we used to meet in coffee shops and take notes about how we were going to change the world, coming from the private sector and trying to do
brilliant.
something good with that. Should be a good guest to have. But
Great.
my point of bringing her up was, oh yes, so we started the School for Social Entrepreneurs. We started a hot desking business in deprived neighborhoods. And we had this consultancy that I was talking about, which was called Camberwell. And we grew that from zero to just over 1 million turnover in about 2 years.
Brilliant.
And I did the fatal mistake on that business, and probably it's one of the biggest um, fails in my life commercially. And I listened to one customer too much and bet the farm on that customer because they were going to help us build 100 shines
Right.
across the UK. They
Yep.
were an investment company out of London. They still exist today. I won't name them, but anyway, they basically kept saying, "Well, are you sure you're big enough?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." Dawn is a Dawn was a project manager and used to install systems around the world for Cisco and other people like that.
Right.
So thousands and thousands of systems everywhere. So her project management skills are off the scale. So I was
Yes.
like, we got this, no problem. We know how to do this. But as soon as you bring it, but they kept saying, "Do you have enough people?" So I started hiring people like crazy. So I think I hired probably, I don't know, we had a team of about nine. I hired another nine, maybe 11 people within the course of like 5 months because
Right.
they kept saying, and of course they hadn't given us the business yet. So I just kept winning more business to try to feed all these mouths.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, they stopped taking my calls. They stopped returning things. And we were pretty close to this organization. I mean, I thought we were in. I mean, this wasn't like I was just betting on a, maybe we'll get a whale and this will happen. We'd
Yes.
had a long-term relationship with this organization. We'd known them for several years at this point, several years. I mean, 2 or 3 years at this point. And they just disappeared and ghosted us. And by August of 2010, I I couldn't. We had five contracts, five bids out for contracts. I think we won one, and we had to win three to keep going, and then that was it. So I had to tell a lot of young, bright sparks that we had hired that
Yeah.
this dream that I told them about a year earlier. In fact, it was exactly a year earlier in August the prior year, saying, "Look, this is it. We've got it. We're going to make £1 billion of impact. Here we go." And they believed me, and they should have because I believe myself. And
Yeah.
the one thing I'll never forget is one of the kids we hired, and he was a Oxford grad and smart kid, and really into social justice and whatnot, and good kid. And because he was so young, well, he basically said to me in the exit interview, "You lied to me," and that absolutely
Oh,
broke me. I was
yeah.
like, "Wow, right, okay." Your words do have impact. You need to be careful with what you say. And I think that was probably the most, besides having to lay off the people and then close the company down and stuff like that, that was probably the worst aspect of that whole failure
Yes.
was having one of the people that I really was inspired by, a young kid who's going to do a lot of great things, and he is doing a lot of great things now. Um, say to me that you lied to me because you don't want to be known as a liar, do you? Because I mean, that's
No,
not something that you go around. Yeah, I want to be known as the liar. Um,
but
so
but
I didn't
line.
lie to him, obviously, but
No.
as he's a young kid, that's the way he looked at it. He was
Yeah.
like, "You said this was going to happen, it didn't happen," and I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but I can't do anything about it."
No.
So, fast forward, we didn't learn our lesson, even though we picked one thing. I said that we had that dinner spaghetti, and we said, "Oh, pick one thing. We'll pick this. We'll pick this social enterprise thing." We did
Yep.
that. You think we would have learned the lesson? No. Like I said, we had four businesses going at the same time. Camberwell crashed. We're like, oh God, we better start some focus on something. So then we spun off the School for Social Entrepreneurs. That's still going today, the Yorkshire branch. We closed the hot desk and we put all our focus and shine in 2010. And we've had a really great run. We actually made it really good run through COVID. We were happy to be the right size space, so we were able to take part in government funding that would keep us alive. So
Brilliant.
we were able to do that. And we're only just starting to feel a bit of the crunch at the moment, sort of 3 years, 4 years on. I'm sure you've had other hospitality people that told you that sort of a whipsaw effect that's happened from COVID is you made it through, but if you haven't saved enough cash, a lot of them are going out of business because they didn't save enough cash.
Yes. Yeah.
But we're fine at the moment, but it's just we're
Great.
starting to see it's never really going to come back the way it was.
Yes. It.
So that's
Yeah.
a potted history and not 1 minute version.
That's wonderful. I mean, what a great story, and so many things have gone on. And from all those things that have happened, both the successes and challenges, what would you say are the top things you've learned about growing businesses in general?
Um, I guess for me, this is going to sound the antithesis of someone who's a business success story or something, but I really think it's not about growth. I don't, I'm not, I'm not a socialist or an anarchist or anything like that, but I think, I think that it's the book I wish I had read before I started all this journey back in 2005/6 when we moved here. To become entrepreneurs and not, well, Dawn was already an entrepreneur. She'd already started a consultancy company, but I'd always been in big business. Is a book called Small Giants by Bo Burlingham. And that book, it really changed the way I looked at things. I didn't read it until about 8 years into my journey. And it kind of spells out, it takes a inside look at several different kinds of companies from a one-man band to, bigger companies and kind of points out that you don't have to be this, General Motors or I'm trying to think of the
Yep.
UK equivalents, Virgin or whatever. You don't have to be these
Yep.
massive companies to be doing really cool stuff and to make
Yep.
a big impact in the world.
Yes.
That's the book I always recommend to people because I think we're always kind of grow, 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 especially as American. It was like grow, grow or die, grow or die. It's like, and I just don't. And in this whole, I don't like the word because I think they mean it as a sort of a slur, which is, oh, you're a cottage industry. Oh, you're a
Oh, yeah.
two person company. Oh, you're not really a company. Well, yes, you are, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who started a company knows it's bloody hard. So whether you have one person or 100, I would argue that 100-person company is a hell of a lot easier to run
Yeah.
than a one or two-person company.
I would agree completely.
So, yeah, I guess that would be the thing that I've learned is that growth is not everything, and that because I sat in Shine right as it was done, and I said to one of the other co-founders who's no longer with us, he's retired, Alan Wallace, and I said to him, "We're going to make £1 billion of impact. We're going to make 100 of these." And it wasn't until about 3 years later, another co-founder who's no longer with us, and he's doing a bit of consultancy now. Um, Chris, he said to me, Todd, do you really? We were having a coffee somewhere, and he said to me, you really want to build 100 shines? You know what your job will be then. You'll be looking at spreadsheets, figuring out which shine is doing okay or not. You won't actually be doing shine. And that really resonated with me. I was like, I'm not a very fast learner. It's taken me like 20 years now to figure out actually what's going on. And I think I'm comfortable now that the Chic and Shine platform that we're building, yes, it's going to go global, but we're not going to go global.
Yeah.
We're going to hopefully spark a movement where people,
Yeah.
you know, take it up in different locations and
Yeah.
go with it. I'm not interested in charging these people. I just want people to say, "Oh, I really think this is special sauce here. I want to take this forward." And people have to pay into the platform, so that'll help us give them revenue to do the in-person events and things of that nature. But I'm not interested in doing that. I think it's a sort of construct that doesn't it's difficult to manage and work, and I'm not interested in doing that. So I think growth is not is not it. And the other thing you were talking about mantras or things to remember from my MBA training, the one thing we always recite is cash is king.
Yep.
So I don't care what your P&L says, if you ain't got any cash in the bank, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So we always look at that. Cash is king.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, and everything you said absolutely makes sense. And I guess we always say coaching. If you don't get the answer you want, ask a better question. So perhaps the question was not as good. But I guess that's one of the key thing is what are the secrets of a successful business, and cash is king is has got to be, if it's not number one, it's got to be in as a famous football manager once said it. I'm not saying I'm the best, but I'm in the top one. So we'll stick that one as the top one because cash is king.
Right,
Yeah, a
right.
business can't survive. And throughout your journey so far, you're probably aware from that. I think we've talked about before. We're a business coaching organisation, so I'm keen to know the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest impact on you?
So that's one thing I wish I've had coaches. I wish I had looked at it, and this may change in this year or next because I'm looking at doing some different things. But um, I've never had like an action coach or business coaching, and I bet I would have made a lot less catastrophic mistakes if I had somebody along, sort of making me actually say it out loud what I was going to do, making me really think about things.
Yes.
Um, uh, I think that would have really helped. As far as people in my life that have done that, to some extent, one was David Roberts, who was a professor at Manchester Metropolitan University. He's no longer with us. He was in China at the beginning of the COVID thing, and then um, he ended up dying from COVID about a year later. Well, I think complications. You know how in the first, when everyone was getting COVID at the beginning, it ended up affecting your heart a lot. Like
Yeah.
you would get heart disease and you would die of a heart attack like very soon.
Yeah.
That's what happened to him.
Yeah.
He was the one who I'll tell you the story about him in a second, but the other person is Ned Host, who's very much alive today, and I just had a phone call with him, as I do every Wednesday. We started a business together. That didn't really work out. It didn't fail, but it just didn't work out. It was a digital publishing business. Did a lot of cool things with that. It was called Dacunia. But we really, I think, created a great friendship from that. And that was back from, I've known him since 2014, 2015. We
I know
both
Ned.
met on the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Business Program. We were both giving a talk to the participants on the program because that program in the UK started at Shine actually.
Right.
And yeah, and now it's nationwide and it's based out of Oxford. Obviously, they
Yep.
wouldn't have the Oxford brand down there, but it was Leeds University
Brilliant.
working with Goldman Sachs that started the program, and they were with us for about 9 years,
Brilliant.
running the program out of Shine. And so I ended up interviewing, being on interview panels, and then also doing some of the classes. We did one on sort of social impact and whatnot, and I met Ned through that, and we just, you know how when you meet people, especially in business, we just think, oh, we're just clicking. This guy, I'm really getting, he will sort of get each other, and so we ended up trying to all kinds of different things, and then we started this Tacunia thing, which was quite successful in its own right, not monetarily, but it got something. It wasn't until so we looked a little bit deeper into the finances of the sort of big boys and even the smaller ones in the industry and realized that nobody's really making any money. This is almost like Formula One for business. It's not
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not a thing where you make money. It's a thing where you get some grants and hopefully you get to keep pay everybody. But Ned Host has been a great coach to me, not least of which because he will tell me that I'm, full of baloney. For me, as a bombastic white male who's grown up not with I wouldn't say a lot of privilege other than my white maleness, and ability to get education. My childhood was disastrous, uh, but because I don't have other things, I was able to sort of make my way in the world. And he always stands up to that, and he has the different perspectives on things. And even though he's only a couple years older than me, um, he's kind of a wise old owl when we have chats. So I think your question about coaching is you definitely need to find those people that
Yeah.
make you better. Well, I didn't find them until late in life because I've only known Ned since 2015, and I think that was about the time that no, it was 2010 is when I met David. Um, but the story about David is I was giving talks all over the place. I I was man about town in Leeds. I was everywhere all the time. And he came to one of my talks. I didn't know who he was. And then he called me after he went to one of my talks and says, "Hey, I want to come and meet you." And I'm like, "Okay, this is a bit weird, but okay." He's like, "Yeah, I want to meet you." And it was on a Friday. I remember it distinctly because we were going to go on our first holiday in 2010 since we had started the business.
Right.
Because obviously all the money was going into the
Yep.
business. We had no money, we had no time.
Yep.
We thought if you work 1,000 hours, you'll get 10,000 hours of output. That's not how it works, by the way. By the way, this that reminds me of something else. Have you ever heard of a company called Basecamp or 37 Signals, the people that run
Yes.
Basecamp? So it's
Yes.
an online platform. That guy has got it dialed in. Basically, he says they only work a sort of 40-hour week. And obviously, in programming, that's known for working 80-hour weeks. He
Yep.
said, if you start working 80-hour weeks, you'll never work less because you'll always think it takes that much to do it. So, yes, while they have pushes during the year for like 2 weeks, they might to get a project out, they might all pile in, but then they stop. And I wish I'd kind of known that for the first sort of 8, 10 years of being an entrepreneur. Is that
It's interesting you say that one of the biggest things that we help people with, and I help people with is I often say as you grow a business, so if you, a business that that is growing at the same percentage is an exponential curve. If that makes sense. Is you can get a certain level of success or achievement with a few good people and sheer blood and guts. You don't need, you just all work really, really hard. But once you've run out of the key resource of time, it's impossible to grow anymore. It's like if I need to go 10%, but I haven't got 10% more time, that's because I'm trading in effect success for money, time for
yeah,
success.
that's right. Yeah.
And it's a mindset, it's a massive mindset change, Todd. And I think that's one of the things that we help people a lot with is that you have to start thinking about working through people, not doing it yourself. And
Yeah,
some people
and
don't.
also getting everybody to think about how to work smarter, really, because
Yes.
that's really what that is, isn't it?
This. Yeah.
Smarter is saying I'm working 30 hours a week, not 50.
Yeah.
That's smarter.
Yeah.
And knowing and not having FOMO of saying, well, if I was working now. But every entrepreneur will know you're never really clocking out anyway. You're
No.
thinking about work all the time.
Yeah.
Even if you and you kind of almost fantasize that it's fun, and you're doing these things. But anyway, I met this guy, David.
Yes.
He came and it was one of these sort of movie moments where I met him in one of our meeting rooms at Shine. It was a Friday afternoon, and it was like 1 o'clock because we were going to take off to the lakes to go camping. Excuse me, we're going to take off the lakes to go camping. And I was like, well, I guess have this meeting before I go. And who is this guy? So I had the meeting with him. And he, at the sort of just the very beginning of the meeting, after he said, "Oh, I really liked what you said about social enterprise and all these things. I really think you should read this book." And he pushes this book that's like, I don't know, I think it's 1,000 pages. It's a massive book to me. He says, "I think you need to read this book, and it's called The Puritan Gift." I'm like, okay, is this guy a religious fanatic or what's going on here? So he gives me the book, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, whatever. And I didn't think anything of it. And I went, and it rained all weekend when we went to the lakes, of course. And it was actually the weekend that the consultancy crashed. So we had to come back early. But during the weekend, because it was raining and I'd hurt my shoulder in a bike accident, I did a lot of reading. So I got pretty much through the book. I think by the end of the next week, I'd gotten through the
Right.
whole book. And it's an absolute game changer book. It's written by two brothers, Hopper and Hopper. One was a um, finance guy in the city in London, and the other his brother was an engineer. And they wrote this book about the reason it's called the Puritan Gift is it's written in the idea that the Puritans brought this work ethic to America, and that America was built upon, and they had the first CEO was in the ships going over to America, and so on and so forth. And what they kind of point to is the progress of society getting, sort of progressively getting better and better and building a great society where, business is actually integrated with society and is not an aberration of it,
Yes.
hoarding funds
Yep.
and killing the environment and all these other things. It's written like a master's thesis or a PhD thesis. The footnotes are about 50 pages long, I think, of footnotes at the end of it. Highly recommend for people who want to read something that talks about how can you build a business, or how do people did and do build businesses that make an impact without being, it doesn't preach that at all. It's literally just an analysis of all this stuff. Found it really fascinating. It is very I like detail stuff, so it has a lot of detail in there. It talks
Right.
about the Americans in Japan after they won the war, World War II, and how they set up Japan and how that changed Japan, for the next 50 years.
Yes.
It's a fascinating book. It's called The Puritan Gift. But anyway, that's how I met David, and we became friends, and he became a bit of a mentor to me. He was traveling all over the world doing business consulting out of Manchester Met University.
Right.
So he I don't think he realized maybe he did realize he was my sort of coach at the time, but he started to give me a bit more grounding when I needed it. So
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, a couple of great people to recommend. I do actually know Ned, funnily enough, from a long time before you met him. Yeah, yeah, long time ago. I'll mention that afterwards. We'll have a chat.
all right, fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, what a wonderful guy.
You know what he's done though? He's moved down south now.
Oh no, I didn't honestly. I
Yeah,
mean,
he's moved. He lives in Topsham, and he's just published a book, a crime mystery book.
oh
It's
wow,
coming out in April. So
wonderful. I
yeah.
will search that up, and I must get him on
Oh,
this.
you should get Ned on. He's fascinating. The
Is
guy's done 4,000 book covers
right. Yes, I remember he's
for
doing.
different authors and stuff. Fascinating.
I remember when I met him. We met for quite a long time, but we were in a networking group together. But I think one of the things I remember he was doing the work for Ray Mears, the
Yep.
outdoors guy,
Yeah,
and
yeah, he's done all kinds of
he
things. Yeah.
knew him quite well. But it's funny the way you described about listening to things. There's a great quote I love from Robbie Williams, who again unfortunately isn't with us anymore, the comedian, and he talks about a friend. The way he talks about a friend, I think, is a sort of whimsical way of looking at a coach. And he said, your friend is someone that listens to your bullshit, tells you that's bullshit, and then listens to some more bullshit.
Yeah, that's the key part. Keeps listening to it.
That's it. And I just love that. And I think that is a part of coaching, and I know I have my own coach, because you can't coach yourself. And we talk about that. He believes it's scientifically impossible to whinge and whine for any more than 7 minutes. So he just is like, okay, clock's ticking. And we never got
Right.
that far, but it's quite interesting that actually just listening to somebody offload is such a valuable thing as part of
Oh,
obviously a broader
interesting.
thing. Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
it puts his life in perspective, doesn't it? At
Oh,
least
he's
it's
the
not
best.
as shit as that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. He's an amazing guy. He's a ex Olympic badminton coach.
How
So
did you end up getting him as a coach?
he joined my organization. So we were talking earlier. So my organization is global. It's national. He joined to become director of coaching, because a lot of the coaching has been in sport for many more years. It's been in
Yeah,
business.
of course. Yeah.
So he came to bring a lot of the sporting coaching techniques and combine them with the business knowledge that the organisation has,
Right.
so that we definitely focus on coaching. Unfortunately for my profession, a lot of ex consultants have really gone, well, consultants,
Yeah.
consulting work, so we'll call ourselves coaches. And but
Yeah.
consulting is a very valuable thing, but in my opinion,
It's not coaching.
it's telling, here's
Yeah.
my knowledge, I'm going to give you my knowledge, and that's the right thing to do. Coaching is about helping people find their way forward
Yeah.
while providing knowledge where there are other gaps. That's my
Yeah.
approach. So yeah, so coach, so yeah, so no, but he's great, and he just, yeah, it's listening, and then it's helping people find the way forward, and he does it great. And
Hey, I'd be interested in your view on this. What do you think about 28-year-old life coaches?
um, okay, so that's a really good question because it's you could I mean you could say
I don't. It's not a gotcha. I really want to know what
no,
your
no.
honest opinion is about
I
that
have a
stuff.
I have a really strictly clear opinion, and it's true of let's say 28-year-old business coaches or business coaches that haven't actually had their own business.
Yeah.
Now I believe that coaching is in itself is a discipline that means you can be a great coach without having had the experience yourself. Okay, I do believe that. I
Yeah.
think it helps a lot when you've got the experiences to go with it. If that makes sense. So
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying, which I think is a really great answer because I think I've always thought, wow, 27-year-old life coach, what the hell they know? And I forget, well, actually they're a coach. So they've gone to training, they're doing coaching, that's what they're doing. It's life oriented, so they could read a ton of books about stuff. Just because they haven't done it doesn't mean they can. And also, isn't it true if you have done it and you did it wrong, that doesn't make you good at it?
that's well,
You know what I mean?
the other good thing about it, and I would probably have that same, I would give you my answer, but I'm not sure I totally believe it myself. But the issue is, the only other thing is but the good thing about being a 20-year-old life coach or even a 20-year-old business coach is we're not going to collude. If we haven't made those mistakes, well, it's tough. Yeah, business is tough right now. Well, why? There's lots of other businesses out there doing really well. Why would now we? I would use that as a coach, apart from how I would coach, but it can be. I heard this is similar but not directly related. But I remember listening to he was quite a relatively young, he was a 30-odd-year-old entrepreneur. He'd made a lot of money in software and he'd sold, so he was a millionaire. So he was only 31, but he had a lot to say. And he just said, but the thing he said that always stuck with me was, "What's the best age to be a CEO?" And he, who believes 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and the average was about between 50, 40 or 50. And he said, my belief is it's 9 years old. 9-year-old CEO, right? He said, because you've not reduced your dream. The challenge most people have is when you're 9, your dreams are as big as they want to be. And
Yeah.
they've not come into contact with the reality of you can't do that. So your dreams are that big. And the other thing great about 9-year-olds, we don't take no for an answer.
Yeah. No,
Yes,
that's good.
can I have an ice cream? Can I have ice cream? Can I have an ice cream? And
That's brilliant. That's
and
absolutely brilliant. I like that. I like that 9-year-old thing because I think that's a lot of people say, well, what would you do differently if you started over? Well, I would do this and that. No, you wouldn't because you wouldn't have done any of it if you actually knew anything. Do you know what I mean? It's better being naive and going forward. The stuff I did, I look at it now and I try to, especially starting this Chic and Shine thing and really trying to get behind Dawn and make this into a thing, is that now I know so much. I start, doing risk assessments on every single thing I'm doing. And instead of just going, this is going to be amazing, let's make this happen.
Absolutely. You could be the 30-year-old here that came to the UK with no.
Exactly.
And
Exactly. I mean, just even thinking about that's giving me, making me break out in hives thinking, oh, I did what? What did I do that for?
it
And I think when you say the 27-year-old life coach, we have to remember some of the best life coaches are our 9, 10,
well,
11, 6-year-old children. So my son used to always
yes,
ask me why all the time.
absolutely.
And because I took a second, and I thought, well, yeah, actually, let me think about this. Why? Well, he's right. This is stupid. Why am I doing this?
It is. I mean, for me, and this is, giving away coaching secrets that people pay me lots of money for. But the dumber the question, the better the outcome. It just back
Yeah,
to why are we doing that? And I'm
yeah,
not saying you because I've got a better answer. I'd rather just be dumb and just say, just take me through why why you've
yeah.
come to that decision and why you're going to do that. But
Well, if you can't explain it to your 90-year-old man, then you don't know what you're actually doing, and you haven't figured it out yet. So you need to go back and figure it out.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think the other thing is, you maybe think about this. It's not something I've ever said, but I would honestly give up doing what I do, and I love doing what I do. If I ever do anything to harm the dreams of the people I work with, if somebody said I want to be a billionaire in 2 years' time, if I ever don't go, great, okay, let's work out how we might make that happen.
Right.
and if we can, we're going to do it. If we think it's going to be, we might need to increase the timescales or whatever. But if ever was to go, oh, are you sure? I think I would need to stop doing what I'm doing. Um, so
Yeah, because I have to say, a lot of people, they use that and say, "Well, that gave me motivation because they told me I couldn't do it." No, it didn't. It really ripped you inside, is what had happened, and made you bitter about that. Because I mean, most people I know, including myself, it's like those people annoyed me when I was trying to do my things. You know what I mean? They
yes,
weren't helping me. It was the people who said, well, maybe this could work."
that's
So
it's a really interesting concept actually because I work with a very entrepreneurial lady. I mentioned I work with a few, and she will tell you that one of the reasons she did what she did was because she was told she couldn't. But you're bang on. She would have done it anyway. She would have done it anyway. That I don't.
yeah.
I honestly believe. I'm going to ask you. I was seeing it this week. I don't believe that was the driver. I think it was something she remembers from early days. She was told that, but I
Yeah,
don't.
and also you can't. It's hard to use that much negativity as a driver and have it be sustainable. Positivity is much more sustainable as a driver than negativity,
100%.
and that's what we'll see. We see that in politics. We see that in sports. We see it in all kinds of things. Whenever there's a sort of negative driver, it works for a short period of time, but then it burns out. Where the positive driver is sort of like the movements are more on a positive thing. So yes, a movement can be negative based on negativity, like we're seeing in the States at the moment, but that's not going to last forever. It can't. It just can't sustain stuff. And we're already seeing it's starting to crack a bit.
Yeah,
So, I think when it ultimately reaches its nadir, then it's a problem. But
yeah.
Dawn actually got her. You said about your entrepreneur there that did it because someone said they couldn't. Dawn was running the finances of our companies, and she has an MBA, so it's running the finances no problem. And we have very detailed finances. I mean, we run a tight ship, and very good analytics. And one of the investors early on said, "Well, you can't be the finance director because you don't have an accounting degree because this is England, right? So everybody has to have an accounting degree." So that's why it used to really drive me nuts when I first got here. Was like everybody who's running everything was an accountant. I thought, get the accountants out of here. This is stopping everything.
I've got to do it.
So anyway, so Dawn said, "Well, screw you. I'm gonna go get my SEMA. I'll be damned if she didn't have a young child running a couple businesses and literally spent every night at the dining room table studying for her SEMA and got it within a year or whatever
Brilliant,
it was, months, however long it takes."
brilliant.
I thought, well, I guess she showed them. So, but you
Absolutely.
know what? You know who it was? It was another woman in business telling who was part of the investment group telling her she had no business being the FD. I thought
The-
she had an MBA from a top 20 program in
No,
the
no. I
world
mean, yeah.
executive program.
There's a couple of things that I've learned or I've come to believe to be true doing what I do. Is one is um, people tell you what they can't do, not what you can't do.
Yeah, they project their own fears
Uh,
onto you.
100%, and it's understanding. And the second one that I love, which is people see their own faults in other people. So,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
somebody is, as a good example, if somebody suggests they're not sure they trust you, that's probably they're not necessarily trustworthy themselves.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah, yeah.
it,
That's a big red flag, isn't it? When they're always going around thinking people are trying to get them, you're thinking, well, what? Why do you always think that?
I, I remember sitting. So my first business. We were part for quite a long time. We were part of a group of companies, and then we became independent, but with them as a shareholder. So I used to go and see the FD of the group quite regularly, and I remember him saying, and I remember just repeat this. I sat in his office, and he asked me a question. I just said, to be on. I said, to be honest, no, don't ever trust anyone that says to be honest. So I said,
Yeah.
it just made him chuckle. I said, no, I've used the wrong word. I'm not suggesting that you need me to be honest. I am honest. But yeah, I think those two things have come to me is just that people tell you that they can't do it, and
Yeah.
therefore it's not. That's not my going back to coaching. That's not my job to tell you can't. My job's to help
No.
you find a way.
That's a really good reminder, Chris, because I think even like in the Chic and Shine program that we're running, I almost said to Dawn in the beginning, "Oh, what are we doing this thing for? What's this about? The desperate and the hopeful and everything." And I have been absolutely wrong about this. And I have done something wrong myself because I've done exactly what you just said you shouldn't do, which is you shouldn't tell other people what they can or can't do. Now, if they, they want to borrow money from you and you don't want to give it to them, you have to tell them, well, I'm not going to give it to you for this reason. But if they're
Yes.
just telling you something, it's not your place to say you can't do it.
No.
It's not at all, because the strangest things happen all the time.
It's a fundamental, and going back to your question about a life coach. That's why in many ways a young life coach could be the perfect person.
No, I see that now.
Um,
That's why I asked you the question. I thought, I bet you can change my perspective on this, and you have. So
I,
thanks for that.
no, thank you. No, you're making me think some really good memory. I've got a really great memory that I'll share that I may share with you. So we were lucky enough, and again, that's the idea of just doing what at sort of late 20s. Myself, and my partner went traveling for 18 months. We quit our jobs and went away, and we ended up in Nepal. Whitewater rafting was one of the things we did, and a couple of the guys that ran it were Kiwis. They're only traveling through, but they were the guys that were running the boats. And one of them we did two trips in the end. We did a 5 day trip going down a river and camping on the side of the river. It was just the most glorious thing, middle of nowhere, And then we did the second trip was quite a that was relatively challenging, but the second trip was like I think it was grade 5 plus, which is sort of you're getting towards hazard for it's like you're supposed to
Right.
do that if you're a pro, but like in Nepal at that point in time there was no like particular regulation, so we were, well, let's do this. And this guy, he was a Kiwi, he was in his early 30s, and I spent a lot of time with him. We were sitting by a campfire, and I said, "How did you get this life?" So his life was in the winter, he was a ski guide in Switzerland. In the summer, he was a whitewater guide. So he was getting paid a fair amount of money for doing so. So doing what he loved. And every couple of years, he and his mates would just buy a camper van and drive somewhere. So they'd driven I think they drove from New York, I think, at one point, all the way down to Tierra del Fuego in the furthest you go south. Oh, yeah, yeah. Just
Oh,
for
wow.
and this trip he was on, they'd gone from London and they were going to end up in Australia, and they were coming through, and they're having a couple of months off, and they were earning some money guiding. Anyway, that was his story, and I said, "How do you get a life like that? That just sounds like you've just done what you wanted."
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And he said to me, and it was just it was great. He said, "Well, Chris," he said, "when I was 16, my father sat me down and he said, 'Listen, son, as you start to get older, you're going to have to do things you really don't want to do because that's what growing up is all about.'" And I said, "No, I won't." And I never have. And, and that's 30 odd years ago. And I still remember that so clearly that he said that. And I just thought, and I haven't met him recently, but I'm in touch with him. And it just,
That's amazing to have be 30 years ago, because that's what I'm seeing now. I'm so uplifted and inspired by my son and his generation. He's 21 now, and he's at uni in the States, but they just don't look at the world as it has to be a certain way. They look at it as
yeah,
how am I going to be a part of this world? What am I going to do? Which I think you're probably similar age to me, Gen Xer, and we were kind of told this is what you do, and if you don't do that, you're going to fall off the train, and everyone's going to forget about you, and you'll be nothing.
yeah,
When actually that we know that that's not true
no.
now, but we didn't know that when we were in our 20s.
No, I mean, no, I mean, that was what isn't what we were taught. And we were taught very different things. And I think, I mean, what you've identified, I think is really important for anyone that's employing young people now is that they think a different way. They don't think like us. So telling them about, as you said, going back, I don't want to revisit something, but this is going to be amazing. We're going to make billions of pounds. Isn't
Yeah,
isn't going to inspire as many people as it would have done 20, 30 years ago, or even 10 years ago. And I think
yeah,
we've got to understand that it is more about purpose and
yeah,
vision and contribution
yeah.
and
I think the
that's great.
tenets. I've been reading a lot of Stoic stuff lately in the
Yes.
past couple years, and really getting into the Stoics. And I read, oh geez, the most famous one. What's the? I
Um,
can't. My brain is.
one of
I
the
forgot to tell you, but
What's
between the time
really
I met you and this thing, I had a cardiac arrest and died for 15 minutes in 2017 on my kitchen floor, and my wife found me, luckily within 2.5 minutes, because if you make it to 3 minutes, you ain't coming back, and did CPR for 15 minutes until the paramedics arrived and shot me a couple times and brought me back to life. I had the Widowmaker was completely blocked. So anyway, my that's a short way of saying And by the way, that's the best excuse ever for not having a memory. So I use that all the time. People are like, "Oh shit, what did he not remember? I can't remember what he didn't remember because what the hell story was that?" So, anyway, what was I saying? See, I've just forgotten what was I telling you?
You were talking about Stoics, so we were talking about
Oh, the
Stoics.
Stoics, yeah. There's just things that continue to resonate through time, and it's so weird reading the Stoics and and looking at it and going, this was written like 2000, well, more than that, it would be what, almost 3,000 years ago, and you're looking at that and going, this literally could be on an Instagram post right now, like an influencer saying this is the new thing to think about, or Seth Godin could be saying this or that kind of thing, and you just think we haven't really evolved that much as a species.
No,
I mean, so I kind of look at these things and I kind of think, well, the things that I keep close to me and I try to get over to my son when it comes to life and business and stuff is that you always want to be making options. So the more stuff that you work on and do that creates options for you, the better off you're going to be because then you have options, right?
yeah,
And when you don't have options is when life's not great. With no options, not good, right?
yeah,
And the other thing is, we talk about this thing with luck. And it reminded me because you said about how'd you get this life? You're so lucky and all this stuff. And I thought, well, my whole thing is, and you've heard this one before, is that luck is when preparedness meets opportunity. So
yeah,
if you're doing the work and so you're prepared, then when an opportunity comes along, that luck's going to happen, and you
yeah,
will make something of it. So,
absolutely.
yeah, those are some of the kind of things that kind of corny, I suppose, in a way, but kind of things that I live by, because they don't change with generations. Like I could still say that to someone who's a Gen Z. This is what made me think about it. You said hiring Gen Zs. Our generation, Gen Xers are like, oh, they're a bunch of lazies. What are they doing? No, they're not lazy. They just don't, they're just not going to do it the way you did it.
No,
You
100%.
know, and I think it's just trying to relate to them. We have somebody in our business now that's 29. She just turned 29. She's amazing. She's like doing everything, but she doesn't react the same way that I would normally want someone
Yeah.
to react to me. And I get confused all the time. So I'm like, did she not hear what I said? She hasn't repeated it back to me like we've been taught to do and all these things. Yet I'll say something to her, and then a couple days later, I'll bring it up. She's like, "Oh yeah, I've done a spreadsheet. I've done all this, blah 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 blah." I'm like, "Oh shit! All right, you really did get it. I need to shut up."
Yeah. But it is just at least the first part of being able to change is to acknowledge that something needs to change. So we're on the
Yeah.
way, aren't we? But it is so it is difficult. I guess yeah. It's something that, as I say, any employer needs to be really clear on is that an employee that's younger than 30 is definitely thinking about the things differently than most. So most of them will be thinking in a different way.
Yeah.
Funny enough, on the same trip, actually, on the same whitewater rafting trip, the first one, we were a bunch of guys. There was a Kiwi there who was on the trip as a tourist, if you like, and he was 26, I think. And I remember him saying, and I said, "What are you doing on this trip?" And he said, "Well, I've always wanted. I've trained as an accountant. I've always wanted to be an accountant, but I couldn't get my next job because I hadn't had my OE. So in Australia and New Zealand, they have what they call the OE, which is Overseas Expedition,
Yeah.
or whatever it's called. And basically, and this is again a fixed way of thinking, the employers were saying, well, if you haven't done it, we know you're going to do it. Therefore, we don't want to employ you till you've done it. And he said, I've no interest. No, I'm only here because if I don't do this, it's almost like a qualification for getting the next job. So fixed thinking, they wouldn't accept that. He go, no, I just want to work for you. I don't want to do that stuff. That is
Well, I think this is where companies end up they reap what they sow, maybe not right away, but down the road. Because I mean, you look at things now, and you even see the big four have finally realized, hey, there's all these really bright sparks that could be doing a lot of consultancy, and we could be billing them out at really good rates,
yes.
and they're going off to do just other jobs. We could take them right out of sixth form. We can take them right out of sixth form right after that, and they'll be better than the ones that went through university.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
This is the thing, and I'd rather have somebody. We always hire for attitude
Yeah,
because you can't train attitude. If people have a crappy attitude, then you forget it. I can train you to do anything because if
absolutely.
you've got a good attitude. So we never we know we rarely hire for the
Uh,
exact skill set. I'm looking to see how do you respond to things? And we used to do the McKinsey hiring technique. We still do it at Shine as well, which is the 7-step process. I don't know if you know, but McKinsey, the global consultants, they have a very famous interview process that lasts about 9 to 12 months.
Oh, okay.
So they figure if you make it 9 to 12 months, then you might be okay for them to stay in it. But we shortened that not to 9 months, but we shortened it to
Yes.
about 7 steps where you had to come in. We had the sort of turkey interview where you come in and it's like, well, we'll know right away within 5 minutes whether this is gonna work,
Yeah.
right? And then that way we don't waste each other's time in a 1 hour interview, knowing that 5 minutes in, I don't really want to be talking to this person because they're not going to work. They've got 5 red flags in the first 5 minutes or something, right? Then if they make it past that, that's usually, I'm sorry, that's on the phone. Can they construct a sentence? Then they get brought in for a 15-minute interview, which is a little bit more to give them a bit of a chance. This is, of course, after you see their CV. And then once they pass the 15 interview, they are given a case or some sort of, depending on what their job role is, some sort of problem to solve. It's
Yep.
not super hard or anything. We're not trying to trick people, but
Yep.
just want to see how they think and what they do. Then they come in for an hour interview, and then they still have to go around and meet all the management team and the other and people on their team. And after all of that, then we figure out, is this person the right person to
Bang on.
hire? It does take a little bit more time. It's so that's expensive, right? To take time to do all that stuff. But you end up having much better hires. And, I think then just whatever, who's this person? Oh, their CV looks great. Well, with AI, you can write an amazing CV now. So, I
100%.
mean,
No, funny enough, our recruitment process, and I won't go in it right now, but is absolutely based on attitude over experience. But it is actually something that's actually reduces potential time. And I'll if we get a chance later
oh,
on,
interesting.
I'll explain it to you. Yeah, when we start, yeah, I'll come. I'll explain it to you at some point. But it's interesting. Exactly that. The only thing I do say is, if I ever need a brain surgeon, I'd like to have a little bit of
Well,
experience.
yeah,
They're just really keen just to get stuck in. But
yeah, 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 yeah. No,
I would
no.
say above a base level. So above a
Yeah,
base
of
level
course,
of
of course.
experience and
Yeah,
qualification, we
yeah.
need the attitude. 100%. Brilliant. So Scott, Todd, sorry, we've talked a little bit about learning in general and quotes and sayings, and I'm just keen to know, are there any other famous quotes or sayings that you use regularly, and any other books or people that you follow that are valuable to you and that might be to the people watching?
Yeah, well, I'll go ahead and bring up the one we mentioned offline before, which was the quote around keeping it brief, which obviously I didn't get the memo at the beginning of this podcast because I just went off on one. But verbal paucity is a monstrosity, so we should all strive for linguistic precocity, which is a really posh way of saying make it quick and short. Don't be a blabbermouth. So yeah, anyway, that's something that's always stuck in my head. And there's always the 6 Ps. If we're gonna go down this list, these things are popping in my head. The 6 Ps, which was also told to me by my stepdad. Oh gosh, no, I'm gonna get it. The 6 Ps are uh oh God, I've messed it up now. It's like poor performance. No, wait. Uh, something
Around,
about poor
around
performance and
planning,
is
isn't it? It
I
starts with
can't
planning.
remember it. It's going out of my head now. I haven't actually said it for years, and for some reason it's just come up because I've thought of that
I think
precocity one.
performance is the end. Is it about planning and preparation leads to?
Yeah, well, basically, yeah, piss poor performance is the result of yeah.
Uh,
Uh, anyway. So those are some of the kind of the things that I think about. But as far as books are concerned, again, I would just say Small Giants, Bo Burlingham. That's just a great read in terms of business and understanding that growth isn't everything, and you can build amazing businesses from 1 to 10,000 people. And The Puritan Gift, if you're looking to look at how you can structurally in the capitalist system build companies that actually look after their people and society and things of that nature. And it's not preachy at all. It's just a sort of diagram. But also one of the books that we use, strangely enough, because I always think when I was prepping for this and thinking about things, I wanted to get across the point that I felt that business was now I feel this. I didn't understand this 20 years ago, but that business really is about people. You know, that people say, "Oh, business, you do people with people do business with people." That's right. They do, but what does that really mean? And I think what that means is we have to bring sort of our whole self to the business.
Yeah.
We don't bring a sort of caricature of ourselves to the
Yes.
business and then go home and be someone else. That's a recipe for a total disaster. We've got to bring our whole self. And so, as part of that, what we use in our business for our sort of HR guidance is this book by Ruiz. It's called The Four Agreements, and based on Toltec wisdom, which is Native Americans. It's a international phenomenon around New
Yes.
Age thinking and things like that. But it's really just a simple book that I came across in my late 30s. And it's based on just the four agreements. Don't assume, integrity of your word, so don't lie, right? Do your best. And the biggest one of all, don't take it personally. Because as we were saying before, you were talking about people projecting onto you.
Yes.
Literally 99% of what people are doing is them just putting stuff on you. And so if you don't take it personally, basically if what it says is if you break one of the four agreements, it creates dysfunction or strife or problems, right? And
Brilliant.
so if you look at a dysfunction or a problem or anything in your business, if you look at it, you'll find that somebody has broken one of those four agreements along the way because it's so simple.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so I just recommended that book just recently, but yeah,
Nice.
yeah, that was a really really good book.
The,
And
the,
changing.
there's I mean, alongside that, the phrase that I was taught a long time ago, it's really helped me and helps a lot of people I work with, especially people-oriented people, which is what other people think of me is none of my business. And in fact, the reality then is actually they're thinking about themselves or thinking about what they're going to have for the dinner tonight.
Yeah,
We many people, if people into people, get so wound up about how they appear to other people when those people just aren't even thinking about them. And it's like once you free yourself of that challenge, I think it can.
that's exactly right. And I think this generation that's coming up in their 20s now, they kind of get that, don't they?
Yeah.
Because I saw some kid wearing a shirt that said, "Why do you care if everybody likes you or not? Because you don't like everybody." I was like, "Oh, duh! Wow, mind blowing."
Uh,
It's like a sage on the back of a t-shirt.
I think you're answering your own question about a 29-year-old life coach. Actually, I think you just need
Yeah,
to
exactly,
hang out with more young
exactly.
people. I think we'd be fine. I think it's well,
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
so has been delightful talking to you today. There's so much knowledge that's come out and come out of what we've talked about,
Oh,
and
likewise for me. So thanks for having me.
no, I don't, I could go on for much longer, but I know we've both got things to get on with it. I really want to thank you for the conversation because I think there's so many interesting things and many things that I've not heard before. So that a couple of those book references, I think would be really valuable for myself and other people. Um, and would be great to swing by again and maybe continue the conversation fairly soon, but also look at where you go. But for anyone that's watching would like to get in touch with you or Shine, what is the best way to interact?
You can just hit me up an email, call into Shine. I'm there most days at the moment. My email, I'll give you my email and you can post it on this thing, I guess. Or do you want
Yeah,
me to
well,
say it right
if
now? Or?
if you tell us what it is, we'll also
It's just my name. So Todd.Hannula, Hannula at shinespace.co.uk.
brilliant.
Um,
And look, again, thank you so much for your time. And again, we look forward to seeing the more things that are happening with you, and maybe swing by another 6 to 12 months and continue the conversation.
well, thanks for being so generous. This has been cathartic and fun for me. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.